Wonderful. Well, everyone, it's really nice to be here again. Thank you so much to Monica and Jennifer for hosting. You know, we really are very pleased to have such a strong relationship and collaborative relationship with the Cancer Resource Center as two nonprofits in Ithaca doing really good and important work. We're just always happy to have people to partner with in organizations. I'm so sorry, my dog is at the door. I'm going to be right back. 2 seconds. I loved hearing everyone's giggles. You know, you let them out and then you forget that they're actually there. So tonight we're going to be talking about organizing your documents and having conversations around advanced care planning with family and loved ones. So in January, we did a lot of the basics, the Advanced Care Planning 101, and we're going to do a little bit of a review to that to give you the tools that you need to go forward with success on this project. So tonight we have myself, Sarah Worden. I'm the Director of Development and Community Relations, and Wendy Yetru, Manager of Volunteer Services. Wendy, do you want to give a little wave and let folks know you're here? Nice. And also Anna Osterhout, one of our social workers at Hospicare. So, you know, tonight you've got a great selection from our interdisciplinary team. That's one of the unique things about hospice is that we work together to provide care, patient-centered care to the family and patient. So we did this a little bit earlier while we were waiting for folks to arrive. So just what brought you here today? We got some great answers in the chat box. If at any time you want to pop in anything else into the chat box, please use it as your communication channel. Or if you do want to raise your hand and unmute to ask a question, you're also welcome to do that. But we will try to address any questions that come up in the chat box tonight. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass the reins over to Wendy, and she's going to tell you just a little bit about Hospicare and our services, and then continue on for the rest of our presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. This is such a smaller group than the last one. The last one we had, I don't know, what was it, Sarah, close to 200? So it's nice to see this small, intimate group. You're going to see throughout our presentation tonight that we're going to refer to it as how to put together our important documents, but you might also see the word death binder mixed in there. This presentation or the documents has a lot of different titles out there. Here at Hospicare, we tended to go with the words death binder. I realize that might be uncomfortable language for everyone, so or might not be comfortable language for everyone. So I'm going to try to frame it as a just in case binder. I'll start out though talking a little bit about our services. Our primary services are palliative care, hospice care, and grief support. And we offer these services to all residents of Tompkins and Cortland counties. That's our service area. So palliative care. Palliative care is specialized medical care that uses a team of doctors, nurses, and other specialists who collaborate to provide the care. The goal is to help patients in relieving the symptoms and stress of a serious illness in the hopes of improving quality of life. Under palliative care, this can be provided at the same time as curative care and at any stage or any age of a serious illness. Hospice services, on the other hand, specialize in end-of-life care, usually the last 6 months of life. And this is where the interdisciplinary team that Sarah was just referring to comes in. This team works with the patients and families to develop an individualized plan of care that includes pain and symptom management, as well as support for emotional, spiritual, and social needs. When people choose hospice, they're directly involved in their plan of care and how they want to live out their final days. To support these decisions, patients and families are provided with the education, resources, and support that they need. Many of our hospice patients choose to stay in their home environment, but we do offer hospice services in any home setting, which includes skilled nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, the hospital, and of course our 6-bed residence, in addition to people's private homes, of course. I think that's it. Oh, and then of course we have grief support, which comes in many different ways. And that is offered to not just people who've lost a loved one on our hospice services, but it's also offered to community members. All right, so we're gonna head right into our featured program, which is how to put together a just-in-case binder. And what is it? What is a just-in-case binder or a death binder? It is a place for us to gather all the important documents and information that's needed for our wishes to be carried out after we've passed on or had a serious illness and may not be able to speak for ourselves. Why make one? Well, as the title of our workshop suggests, it's putting it together is a gift to our loved ones. It makes it easier on our loved ones after we're unable to make decisions, and it's a number one reason that people make these. Is to help our loved ones. But it's also a gift to ourselves because during it, we have the opportunity to kind of review our own life while putting it together and making changes if we decide to. Our just-in-case binder provides a concrete plan for our family to follow, hopefully helping to alleviate any surprises. Having all this information already together in one place allows family members to provide each other with emotional support and the opportunity to bond, rather than spending time on the details that will already be spelled out. And finally, if you're sick when you're putting this together, it gives your family and friends the opportunity to be supporting you and being a loving presence for end of life. So the first step when making one is setting the intentions, which is asking yourself the hard questions about your life and your choices. Like, how do you imagine your end of life experience? Is your hope to stay at home at any cost? Are you willing to go into another facility? What medical or life-sustaining care do you want? Who are the family and friends who will be most impacted and how? And then what do you want your legacy to be? So thinking about those will all help you set your intention as you head into making this binder. Once you're ready to start though, I think it's important to set realistic goals. Don't pull your hair out. There's a lot. If you look at it all, there's a lot out there. But if you find the resources that work for you and set your realistic goals, then I think you can enjoy the process. And I hope that you do. You need to just kind of figure out what feels best for you. So what is in a death binder or a just-in-case binder? It is mostly leaving a paper trail or a digital trail, as our modern times include. So it's gathering all the important information and documents that we want to be readily available. And those can include things like medical documents, bank account numbers, insurance policies, investment account details, safety deposit box details and keys, social security cards and other identifications like passports and birth certificates, utility and other monthly billing information, mortgages, deeds, lease, vehicle titles, internet account numbers and passwords, and important phone numbers for family members. As you can see from the list, there are many different documents that are included. So some of the categories we'll go through a little bit. I mentioned medical documents. Under medical documents, you have, of course, your health insurance policies and, of course, your health insurance cards. You're going to want to include perhaps a list of physicians with telephone numbers, but included with those physicians, perhaps listing any health diagnosis and why you see that particular physician. What medications might you take as a result of seeing that physician? What's the list of the diagnoses? Do you have any allergies? A list of those allergies. If you're unable to speak for yourself, all of this information is going to be really important for your loved ones to have access to and quickly. You can go on to include things like a list of your surgical histories, medical procedures, like what do you have done annually? When's the last time you had it done? A list of family medical history may be important. Of course, things like healthcare proxies, MOLST forms, and 5 wishes document, which Anna will talk a little more about later. So a healthcare proxy. This one is a legal document and it designates a person to make your healthcare decisions for you if you're not able to. And this person will only make those decisions if you're unable to. Because it's difficult to know all the choices that will need to be made, it really is important to appoint someone that you trust and who knows your core values. The other really important thing would be to have a conversation with this person that you appoint as your healthcare proxy so that they do understand what is important to you and what your choices are. The interesting thing is you can think that you know exactly who should be your healthcare proxy, and then you're surprised that they don't really know as much as you thought about them. And I found that with my parents when they appointed me their healthcare proxy and I asked a little more questions about what they wanted. And I was just surprised to find out what their choices would be. So again, those conversations are really important. Then making sure that everybody has a copy of this proxy, knowing where it can be found. Then there's the MOLST form. This is called a medical orders for life-sustaining treatment, and it outlines more detailed wishes like DNR and some other very specific decisions that you might want medically. So this can just guide more specifically your healthcare proxy with your choices. The MOLST form gets reviewed with your physician and signed by your physician. And then, of course, you're going to want to leave instructions about whether or not you're an organ, eye, or tissue donor, so that they can carry that out. You can fill out an organ donation card and carry it in your wallet. And actually, or in New York State, you can actually list that choice on your driver's license. It's right there. But again, letting the people close to you, and especially your healthcare proxy, know because oftentimes you can make arrangements ahead of time. Then there's legal documents, like the durable power of attorney. And this is someone who can make financial decisions when you're no longer able to. So they this document can be drawn up by a lawyer, and it helps if finances are complicated or there's exceptions for the use of your money. There's also a will. The will indicates how you want your assets and estates to be distributed after your death. The person you name within your will as the executor is then the person responsible for ensuring that those wishes are met. So you're going to want to name an executor to your will also. There's also something called a living trust, which provides instructions about a person's estate and appoints someone called the trustee to hold the title to property and funds for the beneficiaries. A living trust can provide a detailed plan for property disposition. The next category is burial plans and final preparations. This is a chance for you to reflect on your final wishes and then leave those in writing to direct your family. This allows your family a peace of mind, knowing that they're carrying out your directives. So you get to have a say. The information would include things like a funeral home, the name of a funeral home, burial, cremation, which is your preference, burial plot deed if you have one. Do you have wishes for your own memorial or funeral service, like a favorite song or a reading, or maybe you don't even want one? And also, what about obituary ideas or even a draft? Many people want to actually draft their own. So there's lots of other areas and documents that you can gather, and you'll see in the document that I put together that shows all the different things that you can gather, that there's a lot. But honestly, the more the better. The more you have, the better for your loved ones, less that they have to look for. And some of those other things could be, household or property possession documents, your insurance policies, personal information like your contacts for close family and friends, pet information, any personal history records like a family tree. This one, big. Username and passwords for all online accounts. Do you have them written somewhere for your bank, your cell phone, your credit cards, your email, your online payments, healthcare portals, social media, like a Facebook legacy? Some people assign a Facebook legacy. So leaving all that information. The other thing that's important is to keep those documents up to date. So how do you do that? Some people pick an annual date and say, I'm just going to update my just in case binder every, February 1st. Some people choose to do it every 5 years, every 10 years. Some people do it every time there's a life change, like if you move or there's a change in a medical status or you retire. But keeping them up to date is very important as things definitely change. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Anna.
Okay, so I'm Anna Osterhout. I'm a social worker. Okay, sorry, I want to make sure I was off mute. Sorry about that. So we're going to start by talking about having the conversation, talking about that elephant in the room. Death and dying and preparing for that can be a very uncomfortable conversation to have with our loved ones. But it can also be very necessary in ensuring that a person's wishes are carried out. So according to a 2021 study published in the Journal of Psychosocial Nursing and Mental Health Services, 90% of people think it's important to talk about death and dying and their wishes with their loved ones, but only 27% of people actually have done so. Dying is a universal experience. We've all experienced it in one way or another, good and bad death experiences. The difference between these experiences could rely on whether or not we have actually had those conversations, the very difficult conversations about how we spend our final days. The next, we'll talk about the benefits of making decisions and having that conversation. So you get to voice what you want. There may come a time when you aren't able to make your wants and needs known, but having that conversation and using your voice when you're able to allows for you to remain in control of your life when you may not have the voice to be able to verbalize it. Your family members don't have to guess. So studies show that when there's a meaningful conversation about end of life choices, survivors report feeling less guilt and less depression and having an easier process of grieving. So again, it also helps your family. You can prevent disagreements. People may have differing opinions on what they want for their loved ones or what they feel might be best, but by having this conversation, being candid, being very open about what your wishes are, making it very clear, then it allows your loved ones to feel more comfortable following your choices and your wishes, and it can kind of eliminate some of those disagreements and those discrepancies among family. You can choose all interventions available, or you can choose not to artificially prolong care. So it's up to you. You still have that choice. And this conversation isn't a one and done. You're going to continue to have this conversation. Things might change. You might change your mind on what you want or what's important to you. So continuing to review these things, like Wendy said, and having this conversation ongoing is really, really important to ensure that your wishes continue to be carried out. So the discussions that you need to make or ask your loved ones to make. Wendy kind of touched on some of these a little bit. I'll get into them a little bit more, but a healthcare proxy, it names someone to make decisions on your behalf when you're no longer able to do so. It must be someone who's at least 18 years of age, and it's not recommended that it's like a health professional, like what your primary care doctor or a nurse or someone like that directly involved. And you want to make sure it is someone that you trust. If you don't appoint a healthcare proxy, there is an order of which someone can be appointed as what's called your public health law surrogate. So again, that's someone appointed based on an order of next of kin. So surviving spouse, parent, sibling, children, it kind of goes down the list. So it's a great thing in the sense that somebody that you know and hopefully trust could be appointed as that person, but it takes away the power for you to appoint that person. So your spouse might not be the person that you would have chosen to make those decisions for you. It can be very emotional. So you might have had a different person in mind, but if you don't appoint the healthcare proxy, then someone will be appointed for you. So appointing a healthcare proxy really does keep kind of the ball in your court and give you the power to continue to make that decision and to have that conversation with somebody that you feel will carry out your wishes. So the living will, or 5 wishes, I'm going to talk a little bit more about 5 wishes. So it's the first living will that talks about your personal, emotional, and spiritual needs, as well as your medical wishes. It's an easy to use legal document that is written down in everyday language and helps all adults, regardless of age or health, to consider and document how they want to be cared for the end of their life. We'll kind of get into that a little bit more later on in the presentation too, about the 5 wishes and kind of break that down for you. And then the MOLST, it's a medical order for life-sustaining treatment. It reviews resuscitation and intubation, leading to fluids, antibiotics. And there's also a category for other. So it gives you the options, other things. Some examples would be or no dialysis, certain things that you feel other categories. You are able to list that in the MOLST. It is a medical order. that is reviewed by the doctor, and it's continuously reviewed and updated as needed. And then final arrangements. So that's when you would talk about cremation versus burial, calling hours, funeral, if you want a small or a large gathering, where to be buried or what to do with the ashes, all of those conversations, very, very difficult conversations, but very important, because that can be a huge stressor on family and loved ones after somebody passes. If they don't know what the person wants, then they're kind of going back and forth and trying to figure out, make the best decision based on what they already know. But it does put a lot of stress on them to make sure that they're, trying to honor their loved one the way that they would have wanted to. Finances for final arrangements are really important to kind of make arrangements for, talk about, discuss. We talked about, obituary, having that conversation. I actually had a family member that I didn't realize he had planned on doing this, but after he had passed away, I had read his obituary, and he had written his own obituary, but it was from his perspective. So he wrote it telling his own stories, sharing his own version of what his life was in his own words, like using I pronouns. It was very, very interesting and inspiring. And it was, I've never seen something like that. So just, it's what you want and what you want to make of that. It's important to kind of talk to your family about it so that it can continue, so it can actually happen. Next is conversation starters to help with these difficult conversations. So end of life planning is critical at every age, but it can be very difficult to find a way to introduce the topic. So some suggestions or options could be saying, there's been something on my mind and now's a good time to bring it up. Or I want to do the right things for you when you need them most. How can I help? You matter to me and I care about you. Another way to start the conversation is to maybe, if you're trying to talk to your loved one, wanting to know what their wishes are, start by telling them what yours are. Kind of reflecting on your own wishes will allow for an open, honest space for someone to feel comfortable sharing what theirs are with you. Then we're going to get into conversation tips. So tips on how to have that conversation. So choose the best time and place. So a place that you feel comfortable, a place that's private, when you have a lot of time, when you're not on a time constraint. Write out and rehearse what you want to say. Sometimes that can be very helpful. Using I statements. Remember, this is kind of about you, what you want to share. Share your thoughts and feelings about it. And you may need to have follow-up conversations. Like I said before, this isn't a one and done conversation. This is going to be an ongoing conversation that you're going to want to have with your family and your loved ones. And it will get easier the more you talk about it. You'll start feeling a little bit more comfortable, and the more you talk about it, the more that people are already going to kind of know what you're wanting. So it's just going to be updating it and talking about changes. So it's not going to be, it won't always be the elephant in the room, essentially. And then use a guide like the 5 wishes. So the 5 wishes, I'll kind of break that down a little bit more. So it's a living will. It's not a legal document, but it is something that you can provide to your loved ones and your healthcare proxy to explain your decisions about your end of life wishes. So the 5 wishes consist of 1, naming the person you want to make care decisions for when you can't, 2, talking about the kind of medical treatment you want or don't want. 3 is how comfortable you want to be. 4, how you want people to treat you. And 5, what you want your loved ones to know. So we kind of already talked about the first step being the person you want to make decisions. So this is an example or a sample of wish 3. So my wish for how comfortable I want to be. So 5 wishes, it's very simple. You're essentially going through the wording's already kind of there for you. You're just crossing out things that you don't necessarily want. So all that's left on the paper are the things that are important to you. So my wish for how comfortable I want to be. I don't want to be in pain. I want my doctor to give me enough medicine to relieve my pain, even if that means I'll be drowsy or sleep more than I would otherwise. I wish to have personal care like shaving, nail clipping, hair brushing, teeth brushing. I wish to have religious readings, and well-loved poems read aloud when I am near death. So this is a very simple way to break down what's important to you during this time for how comfortable you want to be. And some of these things might not apply to you and you would just cross them off. And there is a section to be able to add in some things that might not already be on the 5 wishes document. And then next is wish for sample, which is how I want people to treat me. So I wish to have people with me when possible. I want someone to be with me when it seems that death may come at any time. Some people, dying can be very fearful. They don't want to be alone. They want their loved ones near them, or you want to be in your own home, or you'd prefer to not be in your own home or in a loved one's home when you pass. So how you want people to treat you at that time. I wish to have pictures of my loved ones in my room near my bed. Some people don't want to have people around them when they're passing. They prefer, just to kind of go. They wait until people aren't in the room. So, kind of voicing these things, and these can change. You can cross things off, you can add things, and you can update this as your life changes and your perspectives on things change. So again, this is just a sample, but it gives you an idea of what the 5 wishes entails, what that looks like, and what it could look like for you if you chose to complete the 5 wishes document. So the next slide, share the responsibilities. Each person has unique strengths. One person can be a healthcare proxy, another a power of attorney. So again, healthcare proxy making the medical decisions on your behalf, the power of attorney making the financial decisions. Choose people willing to take on the task and choose one that will follow through on your arrangements. One thing I do want to point out on the power of attorney, because I didn't kind of talk about that too much. It's something that people don't always understand with it is the power of attorney. Once someone passes away, it's no longer valid. So the power of attorney does give the person appointed, the right to assist with finances. They can, pay someone's bills, help going to the bank, do everything financial, but it's only while the person is still alive. I know that from my experience has caused some people a lot of distress, not realizing that. They'll go to the bank after someone passes, hoping to take up some money to pay a bill for them or to even pay for their final arrangements. And they'll present the power of attorney document. The bank has already received notice that the person has passed away, then it's no longer valid and they aren't able to retrieve, money on that person's behalf as the power of attorney. So definitely something to keep in mind. And that's where your will comes into place. So paying for your burials, paying for those types of things prior, making those arrangements prior.
I don't need right now to print anything because I found a second form.
I didn't know if that was someone talking to me or if it just, not sure what's going on there, but if you have any questions, definitely feel free to chime in and I'm happy to answer any questions on that. So yeah, I think essentially I did want to share kind of a short story of an example of something that I've come across in my past as a social worker. So I've had a patient in the past residing in long-term care facility, had the ability to make decisions, had family members though that didn't really agree with those decisions and tried to override them. We were able to have a conversation, and essentially the family members that wanted to override the person's decision were the only family members. So they would have been listed as the person's public health law surrogate if the individual was deemed to not have capacity. But because we had this conversation, we realized that those people would not be the ones to carry out the person's wishes. He was able to kind of take control of that, find somebody that he felt comfortable with to make decisions for him and to carry out his own wishes. And he was able to fill out a healthcare proxy form. So that could have been kind of a disastrous event for that individual, if it kind of panned out that way, because his wishes may not have been carried out towards the end for him if he didn't have capacity and didn't complete the healthcare proxy. So again, just kind of an example of how important it is to have these things in place, to complete the healthcare proxy forms, to have these very, very difficult conversations, as hard as they may be, and lean on your professionals in the community, hospice workers, so other social workers, counselors, therapists, lean on those people to help you even have those conversations with your loved ones if needed. That's what we're kind of there for, or use a third party that you feel comfortable with to kind of bridge that gap if needed. Is this back to Wendy now, I think?
Yes.
Okay.
It's back to Sarah, right?
Sarah, I'm sorry.
Well, I think that I made a mistake in organizing the slides and that this was originally in your section, Wendy. So I can fill in, or if you're willing to pick it back up, and then I'll come in for the slides I usually do.
Okay,
about this
I
already.
apologize for that.
that's okay. I think we talked some about legal documents already, but
Yeah.
I can just, you can all see the list of additional legal documents that could be included. Everything from wills and trusts to divorce and separation records to employment records, military service records are very important. Yeah, I think that's it, right? For me.
So it's just that one outlier. All right. Okay. Well, I'm sure, everything that Wendy and Anna's just shared is so helpful and also probably a little bit overwhelming. We understand that it's a lot of information, especially if you've never heard some of this terminology before. It can be a little daunting to start this project. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how you can organize it, something that's really tangible, with some good, easy takeaways that you can start tonight or this week. So, sometimes we call it a death binder because we use a binder to organize our documents, but it also could be a box or a bag or a filing cabinet, right? The idea is for you to choose something that is going to work for you. Because the more customized it is for the kind of person you are, the way you like to organize things, the more success you're going to have in completing your project. So I'm just encouraging you to kind of take the things that we're sharing, but then really customize it for yourself, right? So I happen to use a binder, but you might feel more drawn to a filing cabinet because you already have a system that works well for you. Other people actually are drawn to a bag because maybe they have some larger items in there, some three-dimensional items that they want to include in this archive of their documents in life that would be helpful to anyone that was trying to assist them in case of an emergency or in case of death. So the first thing that we recommend including in your just in case binder is a letter of intent or an instruction. And this really goes back to those 4 questions, those 4 profound questions that Wendy brought up at the beginning of our presentation. Really asking yourself, and this might be something that you want to do some journaling, taking those questions that Wendy had, and I'm journaling, doing some free form writing, or having conversations with friends or family to kind of get your gears moving. And you'd be surprised, what you'll discover through that process of writing or talking about these things. So the letter of intent or instruction is an informal document, not your will, but guides the executor of your estate and your loved ones on the important information that will instruct them in case of emergency or death. So it contains all the essentials and help provide a roadmap for loved ones. And you can really customize this. For example, I have a poem in the beginning of my death binder that's very meaningful to me and that I would want to share with anyone that was helping me in case of an emergency. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a DIY binder, a do-it-yourself binder. This approach really appeals to me because I love scrapbooking and kind of organizing anything that's very tangible. I really enjoy that process. So if you're like that, if anything like me, you might enjoy this as well. On the screen here is a picture of actually my mother's just in case binder. So on the left, you can see the exterior of the binder. My mother is an avid gardener and also a birder. So I just love that she chose a binder that really reflects her personality. And then the binder that I chose is kind of this pastel-y, multicolored binder with all of these glitterly gold unicorns and stars all over it. So I think that's kind of one of the funnest parts is picking out a binder that represents you. On the picture on the right, you can see that she's hand labeled the sections of the binder. The first tab says before death, then she says at death, and then will, documents, and finances. So those are the categories that she chose. You can choose what works well for you. The categories that I have are my letter of intent. I have health, and then I labeled my financial tab Do Re Mi, because I like to incorporate little fun jokes wherever I can. I have a tab that is for my car and my home, those items. I have a will tab and an end of life care, because I also felt that if I was to be hospitalized, that I would want certain foods or certain sensuous experiences, like the warm oil applied to my feet, some of those things that were brought up in the 5 wishes document. I sort of gave some resources for what I would want at that time. And you can see my mom's 5 wishes document is peeking out of her binder there. And I will say that when my mother first started to approach me about her end of life plans, it made me very uncomfortable. And I like to share this story because, like Anna was saying, it's very hard. It can be very hard to have these conversations. And I had a classic example of my mother trying to discuss these topics with me, and I became very nervous and anxious, and I really didn't want to talk about it with her. I didn't understand why she was doing it. It felt uncomfortable to me. It felt morbid. But then after a while, with some gentle prodding from her, and then also becoming more comfortable with advanced care planning through my work at Hospicare, I really started to recognize that she was actually giving this to me as a gift to me and my brother. She was acting out of love for the both of us, because she had been in situations with her parents where things weren't as in order as she would have liked. And as an executor, in that situation, I think she saw an opportunity to relieve that burden for her own children. And I came around, and I'm very comfortable talking with my mother about it now. And I'm leading workshops on death binders. So just to encourage you all that even those conversations that can start off really hard, people don't want to talk about it. Just be patient, just be gentle. And I think eventually they'll come around, because they'll see that you are truly preparing it as a gift for them. So leaving the DIY binder aside and looking into the world of ready-made organizers. So, we live in the digital era. There's lots of resources online. Just a quick Google after this class would provide you with tons of different resources and formats and websites and pre-made books, all sorts of things. One website that I'd like to mention is Cake. And, you can see there that it helps with wills, estate planning, grief and loss, dealing with aging parents, health decisions, really allows you to kind of organize all that information online. And it also includes a lot of resources for making some of those decisions. So that's cake.com. And then there's also ready-made forms that you can order or print off of on Etsy. There's lots of different options for these around. And these are the kind of things that you either buy or you print, like a printable, and then you can insert in your binder yourself. And so, I think helps for someone that needs a little more structure or a little more of a skeleton to do the work from. I think it can really help with organizing. If making a scrapbook death binder sounds like an awful experience for you, this might be the way to go. And then here's a bound version of that. I'm dead now, but some little tongue-in-cheek there, but Edna really loves this book, one of our social workers at Hospicare, and it's similar to the printables here, but it's just a bound version, just an easy to access book. So again, I think just reiterating that finding a system that's going to work for you and help you achieve your goal of getting all of this together. Next thing to consider is storage. So this, you know, someone in the chat box at the beginning of the webinar brought up this idea of like, oh, I have paper documents and electronic documents, and that definitely is a challenge for finding a system that works well for both of those. And I think that it is okay to have paper documents and electronic documents, but you would always want to have information about where to find the documents. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation, right? Because if you have a paper version of all your documents, but then you have this hidden electronic file, that's fine, but you would want to give instructions about where that is in your paper copy. Or a lot of people might digitize their paper copies, so then they have all of a whole digital account. But you also want to think about backing that up, right? So having an external jump drive or a USB stick, something that gives a little redundancy so that if your computer crashes or someone can't get into it, that there's still a way to retrieve that information. And some people are going to want to have like both a paper copy and an electronic backup copy. So that's just something to consider and, you know, discuss maybe with people in your family about what is the most appropriate system for you. So a firebox or waterproof or fireproof bag, those are also something to consider. Wendy has a close friend who lives in Florida who feels that she is under constant, you know, risk of having to evacuate due to a hurricane, or, you know, maybe if you lived in an area that was prone to destructive forest fires, this is something you also might want to consider. But of course, house fire can happen to anyone. But this is also the bag concept of that, just that ready to grab and go. If you just have to leave for some reason, it's like, you know exactly where it is. You're not trying to move a filing cabinet out of the house, right? You just grab it by the handle and bring it with you. A lockbox, a safe deposit box, file cabinet, or the good old under the bed storage. These are some other things to think about. Are you going to have some of your documents locked up? Are some of them going to be at the bank? Are you going to keep some of the documents in a file cabinet and refer to them from your kind of master copy of where things are? So just, you know, I think identifying your goals and your priorities for your storage, that's something you're going to want to think about. All right. So this is a wonderful document that Wendy put together based on a few different resources. And we've been, you know, modifying this, improving it as we go. I believe that this was emailed to everyone in advance, but we can definitely send it out if you haven't already received it. The document has all your, you know, your identifying information here at the top, social security names, social security numbers, name, date of birth, your partner's date of birth, etc. And then it has a category of in the home, where these documents are located, if it's where the death binder is located, where the safety box is located, what the box number is, etc. And then if you have anything outside of the home. And then you're just going to go through all of your documents that you have and give them a code that says where they are. Okay, so isn't it in the home, in the death binder, that gets a certain code. This is, I just lost my train of thought. But, oh yeah, this is something that you would include like in the very beginning of your binder, you know, right behind the letter of intent. It's another roadmap for the person that would be making these kinds of decisions or helping you so that they know where to find everything that they need to find. This is just a couple of screenshots of, you know, examples of filling in this information. So I will say that the added bonus of getting all this information together, if it wasn't the gift to your family that inspired you to do it, or if it wasn't the ease of having everything all in one spot, maybe the idea of decluttering your home would be an inspiring for you, another sort of match under your to really ignite the fire and get this project going. This was a really satisfying part of this project for me, was taking a whole mess of papers and narrowing and still distilling it down to that which I really needed. And the project has just really served me well, even though I haven't had an emergency since creating my death binder, right? So I just left the country last week and I knew exactly where to go. I knew where my passport was. There was no stress as far as searching around for it. It just really created a great system for myself for successful travel. So that is the end of our formal presentation. And we'd love to open it up to questions.
And I'm going to stop the recording, so feel free to openly ask anything.
Good idea, Monica. Awesome. Yeah, so you can unmute and just